Welcome back. Glad to have you here. There are species that believe disarming an enemy ends the danger. And then there are species that discover what human engineers consider raw material. Here's how it happened. The first storage crate split apart 30 seconds after impact. Its black composite walls folded inward beneath the force of the landing, throwing restraint bands, insulation foam, and fragments of alien locking mechanisms across the floor of Hangar 12. Chief Engineer Mara Venn watched the wreckage slide to a halt against her boots. Above her, the occupation ship Resolute Mandate groaned as another distant explosion passed through its frame. Lieutenant Daniel Okafor staggered through the hangar doors with 12 human security officers behind him. None carried weapons. The rifles, pistols, cutting charges, and powered armor assigned to the human delegation had been confiscated 6 hours earlier. Okafor glanced at the shattered crate. "Please tell me that contained food," he said. Mara crouched beside a strip of reinforced composite longer than her arm. She ran a thumb across the fractured edge, studying the internal lattice. "It contained our food," she replied. "Now it contains options." Another explosion shook dust from the ceiling. Beyond the hangar walls, 300 alien warships surrounded the Resolute Mandate and the unarmed human convoy beside it. The convoy had come to the Nerethi system carrying diplomats, construction crews, and enough agricultural equipment to restore 6 famine-stricken worlds. It had arrived under a flag of peace. The Karad Dominion had answered by confiscating every human weapon, detaining the convoy's officers, and declaring its cargo property of the Dominion. Then the Dominion's enemies had arrived. Warning lights flashed across the hangar. A deep mechanical voice announced that hostile vessels had penetrated the outer defense perimeter. Okafor looked toward the sealed blast doors. "How long do we have?" he asked. Mara tilted her head, listening to the timing between impacts. "Before they breach the ship? Before they reach this deck?" Mara examined the crate again. 20 minutes, she said. Maybe 18. Okafor looked around the hangar. 247 storage containers stood in ordered rows, each one built to survive atmospheric entry, radiation exposure, magnetic storms, and impacts powerful enough to tear open civilian hull plating. Inside them were irrigation processors, medical fabricators, seed vaults, water pumps, bridge sections, portable reactors, and 12,000 tons of relief supplies. No weapons. Okafor followed her gaze. "You said options." Mara stood. "I did." The Karad Dominion had disarmed 47 civilizations before humanity. It had made an art of surrender without battle. For more than 3,000 years, Dominion fleets had expanded by applying a doctrine known as the principle of separated strength. According to Karad military philosophy, power existed only in complete systems. A rifle without ammunition was harmless. A warship without a reactor was debris. A soldier without a weapon was a prisoner. The Karad believed every dangerous mechanism depended upon a small number of specialized components. Remove those components, and resistance became physically impossible. Their entire empire had been built around identifying those points of dependency. When the silk-armored Lethi resisted annexation, the Dominion seized their neural command crowns. 60 million warriors became civilians in a single afternoon. When the Heliox clans threatened revolt, the Dominion confiscated the crystalline focusing cores from their plasma weapons. The clans possessed thousands of launchers, but nothing capable of producing a beam. When the Orun fleets refused tribute, Dominion agents disabled their navigation engines. 12,000 ships remained armed, yet could not leave orbit. Every victory reinforced the same belief. Strength could be separated from those who possessed it. Grand Marshal Varos Thane had spent 200 years refining that doctrine. He stood on the command deck of the Resolute Mandate, surrounded by curved displays and officers whose dark armor reflected the light of burning ships. His species was tall and narrow, with 4 jointed arms and a crown of silver sensory spines rising from the skull. Each spine moved independently, revealing emotions that Karad faces concealed. At that moment, every spine lay flat. On the central display, enemy vessels emerged from the violet storms surrounding Nerethis. The attackers were Sithari corsairs, descendants of nomadic raiders who had fought the Dominion for 9 centuries. Their ships were ugly, asymmetrical things built around engines too powerful for their own frames. They had no formal battle doctrine beyond speed, surprise, and overwhelming violence. 900 Corsair vessels had entered the system. The Dominion garrison possessed 312. Marshal Thane turned toward Tactical Prefect Selka Orr. "How did they cross the perimeter unseen?" he asked. Selka's lower hands moved across the command surface, while her upper pair remained folded behind her back. "They concealed themselves inside the wake of the human convoy," she replied. "Their engine signatures were masked by the convoy's displacement field." Thane's sensory spines rose slightly. "The humans led them here?" "There is no evidence of coordination. The Corsairs struck the outer defense platforms." 40 stations vanished beneath concentrated fire. The Resolute Mandate shuddered as long-range projectiles struck its shields. Amber light rippled across the command deck. Selka enlarged the tactical display. Sithari formations swept past the system's moons, dividing into 3 attack groups. One moved toward the orbital garrison, another accelerated for the civilian habitats. The third came directly toward the Dominion flagship. "They intend to seize the relief cargo," she said. Thane studied the human convoy. 82 enormous transports drifted beneath Dominion control. Their engines had been locked remotely. Their defensive cannons had been stripped. Their military escort, if 6 patrol ships could be called an escort, had surrendered its weapons without resistance. Human representatives had protested, but they had complied. To Thane, that compliance proved the principle of separated strength once more. Humanity was physically formidable. Its people tolerated high gravity and violent acceleration. Its vessels used inelegant but durable machinery. Its soldiers possessed a reputation for surviving conditions that killed more refined species. Yet they remained dependent upon tools. The humans had brought hundreds of engineers and laborers, but no one on the command deck considered them a military threat. Their cutting torches had been collected. Their demolition charges had been removed. Their security forces had been separated from their armor and weapons. Whatever strength humanity possessed had been taken from it. The Corsairs could not be allowed to capture the convoy. "Destroy the human ships if necessary," Thane ordered. "Preserve the cargo where possible." Selka hesitated. "There are more than 18,000 humans aboard those vessels. The number is irrelevant if the supplies fall into Sithari hands." A communication officer raised one hand. "Grand Marshal, the human ambassador is requesting access to the command deck." "Denied. She says she has information concerning the Corsair approach." Thane's spines shifted. "Bring her." Ambassador Elena Ward entered under armed guard 4 minutes later. She was smaller than the Karad officers surrounding her, dressed in a dark diplomatic uniform, with no armor and no insignia beyond a silver representation of Earth. Her gray hair was tied behind her head. Her expression remained calm, despite the battle unfolding beyond the observation windows. Thane did not offer a greeting. "Your convoy concealed an enemy fleet," he said. "Not knowingly," Ward replied. 900 ships followed you through the storm. Then they used us, just as you did." Several officers turned toward her. Thane descended 1 step from his command platform. "Choose your words carefully. You confiscated our ships, our supplies, and our weapons before your inspection was complete," Ward said. The Sithari saw a convoy unable to maneuver and a garrison distracted by an occupation. Their attack was predictable. "Our actions prevented human interference. Your actions created a stationary target carrying enough food to supply 40 billion people." The flagship shook again. One display went dark. Thane's voice lowered. "What information do you possess?" "The Sithari did not follow us from outside the system," Ward said. "We detected dormant engine signatures inside the storm when we arrived. They were already here." Selka examined the sensor record. "Our instruments found nothing. Human survey instruments did." Thane's spines lifted. "Why was this not reported? Your boarding officers confiscated the survey archive before our captain could complete the warning." For several seconds, no one spoke. Thane turned toward Selka. "Locate the human records." The archive had already been transferred to Dominion Intelligence, where it waited in a processing queue behind thousands of seized files. By the time the Karad found it, the Sithari attack had reached the orbital habitats. The raiders did not fire on the civilian populations immediately. They disabled communications, shattered defensive platforms, and deployed boarding vessels. They intended to take captives, cargo, and infrastructure intact. A Dominion carrier exploded near the fourth moon. The tactical balance collapsed. Selka's calculations appeared across the central display. Projected defeat in 42 minutes, she said. Habitat seizure in 26. Thane looked at Ambassador Ward. Your survey data may have revealed the enemy, he said, but it does not change the outcome. It could have changed it 6 hours ago. The Grand Marshal's upper hands tightened. The humans have no standing in this battle. Ward met his gaze. We have 18,000 people in the middle of it. They are disarmed. They are engineers, Ambassador Ward replied. That is not the same thing. In Hangar 12, Mara Venn struck the storage crate with a hydraulic loading arm. The composite panel bent but did not break. She adjusted the angle and struck it again. This time the panel folded along a clean line. Around her, human technicians dismantled 6 additional containers. They removed locking rails, pressure seals, impact pistons, thermal layers, and electromagnetic clamps. Pieces were sorted into lines across the deck. Okafor watched them work. He had seen military armories opened with less urgency. What exactly are we building? He asked. Mara pointed toward the ceiling. That ship has point defense turrets. Had point defense turrets. The mounts are still there. The ammunition lifts are still there. The fire control lines are damaged, not gone. And the barrels? Melted or missing. Mara held up a length of crate frame. Fortunately, our hosts store humanitarian supplies in containers rated for orbital deployment. Okafor stared at the frame. That is a support beam. It is a support beam made from carbon titanium weave with a ceramic thermal sleeve, which means it can survive pressure. How much pressure? Mara smiled without humor. We are about to find out. The human convoy had been designed for reconstruction after planetary disasters. Every transport carried mobile foundries capable of turning wreckage into structural components. The Karad had locked the foundries, but they had overlooked the portable maintenance units stored inside the relief crates. Those units were not weapons. They were compact industrial systems able to cut, fuse, shape, and print material in hostile environments. The Karad had confiscated anything listed as a weapon on the human manifests. They had not understood that human engineering doctrine did not divide equipment into military and civilian categories as cleanly as their own. A welding rig could seal a damaged habitat. It could also cut through a bulkhead. A survey drone could map a collapsed city. It could also guide a projectile. A cargo accelerator could launch emergency supplies across 20 kilometers of ruined terrain. It could also launch something else. Mara divided the technicians into teams. Team 1 began cutting crate frames into 4-meter lengths. Team 2 stripped magnetic locks from container doors. Team 3 dismantled portable water pumps and removed their pressure chambers. Team 4 rewired agricultural tracking sensors. Team 5 opened the crates containing bridge-building equipment and extracted explosive fastening bolts used to anchor support beams into stone. Okafor picked up one of the bolts. You said we had no explosives. We have no military explosives, Mara replied. These are construction charges. What is the difference? The paperwork. The hangar doors opened. 30 Karad soldiers entered with rifles raised. Their commander, Sub-Prefect Nerol Vey, stepped forward. His sensory spines trembled as he surveyed the dismantled containers. Stop immediately, he ordered. Dominion property is not to be damaged. Mara looked at him. Your ship is under attack. This cargo belongs to the Dominion. At the current rate, it will belong to the Sithari in less than an hour. Nerol pointed his weapon at her. Step away from the machinery. Okafor moved between them. The Karad soldiers adjusted their aim. Mara remained crouched beside the crate frame. Commander, she said, how many operational weapons remain on this deck? Nerol did not answer. She glanced at the scorch marks around the sealed corridor beyond him. The Corsairs have already destroyed your port-side batteries. Your internal sensors are failing. You have an empty turret mount above this hangar and an ammunition lift connected to a magazine full of projectiles you can no longer fire. Nerol's spines rose. How do you know that? Your ship schematics are printed on every emergency bulkhead. He turned sharply toward the nearest wall. The diagrams were intended to guide damage control crews, not prisoners. Their symbols were written in Karad script, but the underlying engineering conventions were familiar enough for Mara to interpret. She held out the length of crate frame. We can make that turret operational. With refuse? With your storage crates. Nerral studied the improvised components spread across the floor. His doctrine told him the humans had been neutralized. His eyes told him they were building something from materials his people did not consider connected to warfare. You will remain here, he said. I will contact the Grand Marshal. You have 17 minutes, Mara replied. Nerral's spines flattened. Until what? Until the Sithari board this deck. The first Corsair vessel reached the Resolute Mandate before Nerral received a reply. It was a narrow assault ship wrapped around a central engine. It crossed the final 1,000 kilometers under full acceleration, released 20 boarding capsules, and turned away before the Dominion's remaining batteries could track it. 6 capsules were destroyed. 14 struck the flagship. 1 embedded itself 3 decks above Hangar 12. The impact threw Mara across the floor. Okafor dragged her behind a cargo loader as the ceiling buckled. Kharid soldiers formed a firing line facing the corridor. A moment later, the first Sithari boarding team cut through the outer hull. They came through smoke in angular red armor, carrying ion lances designed to disable Kharid nervous systems without damaging the ship. The Dominion soldiers fired. Blue bolts filled the corridor. Nerral shouted for the humans to remain down. Okafor ignored him. He watched the exchange for 5 seconds, then pointed toward a row of agricultural drones. Mara, can those fly inside the ship? They can fly through a hurricane. Can they carry a construction bolt? Her eyes followed his gesture. Yes. How soon? Give me 3 minutes. The Kharid line retreated. 2 soldiers fell as ion fire struck their armor. The Sithari advanced with methodical confidence, using the curve of the corridor for cover. Mara's technicians attached 6 explosive fastening bolts to the underside of a survey drone. They removed the safety governors, redirected the soil mapping camera, and tied its control system to a maintenance tablet. Okafor took the tablet. Does it explode on impact? Not automatically. How do I trigger it? Mara pointed to a green icon. That releases the bolts. And the red icon? That was the emergency landing protocol. Was? Now it overloads the battery. Okafor looked at her. I like engineers. The drone rose from the hangar floor, passed over the Kharid firing line, and entered the smoke. The Sithari saw a civilian survey machine and ignored it. Okafor guided it above their position. He released the bolts. 6 construction charges struck the corridor walls and embedded themselves around the boarding team. He pressed the red icon. The drone's battery ruptured. The blast triggered the charges. The corridor did not explode outward. It collapsed inward. A section of ceiling dropped between the Sithari and the hangar, sealing the passage beneath reinforced plating. Silence followed. Nerral turned toward Okafor. You used an agricultural drone as a guided weapon. Okafor handed the tablet back to Mara. No, he said, we used it for structural modification. On the command deck, Grand Marshal Thane watched the Resolute Mandate lose another battery. The Sithari had crossed the outer hull in 7 places. Dominion soldiers contained 4 breaches, but the others continued to expand. Selka placed a new report before him. Human activity in cargo hangars 9 through 14, she said. What activity? They are dismantling the confiscated storage containers. Thane turned. For what purpose? The report claims they are constructing replacement artillery. For a moment, even the battle alarms seemed distant. Thane examined the footage. Human technicians moved through the cargo decks in organized teams. Sparks filled the air. Crate walls became curved shields. Locking rails became ammunition tracks. Hydraulic rams from loading platforms were joined to pressure chambers from water systems. Survey sensors were mounted above assemblies that resembled no Dominion weapon. Those are containers, Thane said. They are rated to survive atmospheric deployment, Selka replied. They are not artillery. Ambassador Ward stood several meters away, still surrounded by guards. They will be, she said. Thane looked at her. Your people surrendered their weapons. Yes. Why did they not surrender their capacity for war? Ward's expression changed slightly. Not to amusement, but to something more solemn. Because you cannot confiscate a way of thinking. Thane watched a technician drag a section of crate frame beneath an empty turret mount. Weapons are specialized systems, he said. They require calibrated materials, dedicated production lines, and proven designs. Human weapons do, Ward replied. Human engineers do not. The distinction is meaningless. It will not be meaningless when they fire. Thane turned to Selka. Order them to stop. We cannot allow untested mechanisms to damage the flagship. Selka did not transmit the command. Grand Marshal, she said carefully, Hangar 12 is one of 3 barriers between the Corsairs and the primary reactor. He stared at her. You propose placing the reactor behind improvised human artillery? I propose acknowledging that it already is. Thane's lower hands rested against the command rail. For the first time in more than a century of command, the principle of separated strength offered him no clear answer. The humans possessed no guns, yet they were building guns. They possessed no military targeting systems, yet their civilian sensors were tracking boarding capsules through the hull. They possessed no ammunition, yet the technicians had begun filling sections of pipe with bolts, fragments, ceramic plates, and the dense counterweights used in bridge anchors. The Dominion had separated humanity from every recognized instrument of violence. Humanity had responded by rejecting the categories themselves. Grant them access to the damaged turret network, Thane ordered. Selka transmitted the authorization. Ambassador Ward inclined her head. That was wise. Thane faced her. Do not mistake necessity for trust. I do not. What do you mistake it for? A beginning. Across the cargo decks, Karad security locks disengaged. Mara's maintenance tablet connected to the flagship's local network. Technical diagrams unfolded across the screen. She stared at the turret architecture. Okafor leaned over her shoulder. Good news? The Karad use modular ammunition lifts. And the bad news? Their fire control software is written by people who hate mechanics. Neryl's spines twitched. Our systems are considered among the finest in the Dominion. Your targeting computer requires 9 permissions to move a broken turret. That prevents unauthorized use. It certainly does. Mara transferred control of the mount to a human diagnostic program. Above the hangar, an armored hatch opened. The turret cavity was 20 meters wide. Its original weapon had been torn away by Sathari fire, leaving a scorched rotating platform, 2 elevation joints, and a power coupling rated for more energy than the human relief convoy produced in total. Mara looked at the components laid out below. They had 12 minutes. She made the decision immediately. We are not building a cannon, she said. Okafor frowned. I thought that was exactly what we were doing. A cannon contains pressure. We do not have time to test containment. Then what are we building? A launcher. What is the difference? This one only needs to survive once. Her teams moved faster. 4 crate frames were fused into a launch channel. Magnetic container locks were spaced along its length. Hydraulic cargo pistons were attached beneath the assembly to control elevation. The water pump pressure chambers became recoil buffers. At the rear of the launcher, technicians installed a cargo accelerator taken from a disaster response vehicle. The device had been designed to throw medical pallets across flooded terrain. Mara increased its power input by 800%. The first projectile was built from an intact storage crate. Its contents were removed. The internal frame was reinforced. 12 bridge anchor counterweights were fixed inside, giving the crate a mass of 14 tons. The outer shell was wrapped in thermal insulation and fitted with 4 survey drone maneuvering jets. Okafor walked around it. We are firing the whole crate. That is why the shape is convenient. It is a box. Boxes stack well. They do not usually fly well. Neither do buildings. We put those in orbit. Neryl approached. The Sathari are deploying another assault wave, he said. 30 ships. How far? 8,000 kilometers and closing. Mara looked at the makeshift launcher. The rails were unfinished. Half the magnetic locks had not been tested. The improvised power bus hummed with enough energy to kill anyone who touched it. How long until they reach us? 4 minutes. She turned to the technicians. Load the crate. The 14-ton projectile rose on the Dominion ammunition lift. Karad machinery carried the human-built weapon into the ruined turret cavity. Mara, Okafor, and Neryl followed. The cavity opened directly to space behind an emergency field. Beyond it, the battle filled the stars. Dominion ships burned across the system. Sathari vessels moved among them like blades. The violet storm around Nerethus flashed with distant lightning, illuminating shattered defense platforms and drifting wreckage. 30 assault ships accelerated toward the flagship. Mara connected the launcher to the turret platform. The entire assembly rotated. Metal screamed as the crate frame rails shifted under their own weight. Nerl stared at the weapon. It is bending. It is settling. Those are not the same condition. Today they are. Mara activated the survey sensors. Civilian mapping software identified the incoming vessels as fast-moving terrain anomalies. She removed the terrain filter and linked the data to the maneuvering jets attached to the projectile. The targeting solution appeared. Okafor studied it. Can the crate hit a moving ship? No. His expression hardened. Then what are we doing? We are firing at where the formation has to be. The Sithari assault ships were approaching in a narrow spearhead, using the lead vessel's shields to protect those behind them. It was an efficient formation against conventional fire. Mara did not intend to strike the ships directly. She aimed at the space ahead of them. "Charge the accelerator," she said. Power flowed from the turret coupling. The magnetic container locks snapped into alignment one after another. The hydraulic pistons compressed. The cargo accelerator whined beyond its intended limits. Across the flagship, lights dimmed. On the command deck, alarms announced an unauthorized energy draw. Selka looked toward Thane. "The humans are using 12% of our remaining reactor output. To power one weapon? Apparently." Thane enlarged the external feed. The launcher appeared on the display. It was crude, asymmetrical, and visibly assembled from storage equipment. Sections of humanitarian markings remained on the rails. One support still bore instructions for stacking agricultural seed containers. At its center rested a black cargo crate. The Grand Marshal's sensory spines rose to their full height. "That is the projectile?" Ambassador Ward stepped closer to the display. "Yes." The Sithari formation crossed 6,000 kilometers. Mara watched the trajectory line stabilize. The launcher creaked beneath her. Magnetic Lock 7 overheated. A warning flashed. She disabled the sensor. Nerl stared at her. "Why did you do that?" "It was distracting me." 4,000 kilometers. The survey system projected the Sithari path. Mara adjusted the elevation by less than 1 degree. Okafor braced himself against the turret wall. "Is there a countdown?" "No time," Mara fired. The launcher released its stored energy. The crate vanished. Recoil tore 2 support braces from the platform and drove the entire assembly backward. The water pump buffers ruptured, filling the turret cavity with vapor. One section of rail twisted into a spiral. Mara struck the floor. For half a second, the projectile was invisible. Then the survey display found it. The crate crossed space at nearly 4 kilometers per second. The Sithari detected it and altered course. Exactly as Mara expected. The lead assault ships shifted left to avoid the incoming mass. The vessels behind them followed, compressing the formation. The maneuvering jets on the crate activated. It did not turn toward the ships. It turned sideways. At the center of the Sithari spearhead, the storage crate opened. Its walls separated. The magnetic restraints released. 12 bridge anchor counterweights scattered across the formation, each one traveling at lethal velocity. Hundreds of ceramic insulation tiles, locking bars, structural bolts, and fragments of composite frame expanded into a widening cloud. The Sithari shields were designed to absorb energy weapons and deflect coherent projectiles. They were not designed to distinguish between artillery and industrial debris moving at orbital speed. The lead assault ship struck the first counterweight. Its forward shield flared and collapsed. A second weight passed through the engine housing. The ship spun sideways into the vessel behind it. Ceramic tiles struck sensor arrays. Locking rails tore through maneuvering fins. Thousands of smaller fragments spread across the formation, each carrying enough momentum to penetrate armor. 6 assault ships were destroyed immediately. 9 lost propulsion. The remainder broke formation. Dominion batteries fired into the confusion. The entire Sithari wave disappeared beneath converging beams. On the command deck, no one spoke. The tactical display showed 30 hostile vessels reduced to drifting fragments and disabled hulls. At the center of the impact zone, pieces of the human storage crate continued into the darkness. Thane looked at Ambassador Ward. "Your engineers turned a cargo container into a fragmentation weapon." Ward watched the fading debris. "No," she said. "They turned the cargo container into the delivery system." The Grand Marshal's spines trembled. "There is a distinction? To an engineer, always." The success of the first shot spread across the flagship. Harad officers who had ordered humans away from machinery now opened armories, workshops, and damaged systems to them. Dominion soldiers dragged broken equipment toward human engineering teams. Human technicians examined components, asked questions, and combined technologies their designers had never intended to meet. Hangar 9 built pressure mortars from oxygen reservoirs and cargo tubes. Hangar 10 converted magnetic loading tracks into rapid-fire launchers. Hangar 11 attached mining charges to empty medical canisters and fired them through maintenance shafts at Sithari boarding teams. Hangar 13 transformed emergency escape capsules into guided battering rams. Hangar 14 produced the most powerful weapon of all. Its engineers discovered that the Karad had stored 200 empty reactor shielding crates inside the deck's forward bay. Each crate contained layers of dense radiation-resistant material. The humans cut those layers into discs. They stacked the discs inside structural tubes. They placed the tubes on magnetic loading rails. Within 30 minutes, the deck possessed 12 improvised coil artillery pieces capable of firing solid slugs through both sides of a cruiser. The Karad watched with growing disbelief. They had believed weapons required factories. The humans used whatever the factories had already produced. They had believed ammunition required specialized design. The humans saw ammunition in every object with mass. They had believed doctrine defined possibility. The humans treated doctrine as a suggestion written by someone who had not yet encountered the current problem. The Sithari boarding advance stopped 3 decks from the reactor. Then it reversed. Okafor led a combined human and Karad force through the damaged corridors. The humans remained technically unarmed. They carried industrial shields made from crate doors, cutting tools, fastening launchers, and drones loaded with adhesive foam. The Karad carried rifles. Together, they retook one deck after another. When Sithari forces barricaded a junction, the humans did not charge. They flooded the corridor with fire suppression foam, hardened it using portable thermal units, and sealed the raiders inside a temporary wall until Karad troops surrounded them. When a boarding capsule continued feeding reinforcements through the hull, Mara's team attached cargo pistons to the capsule's exterior and pushed it back into space. When the Sithari attempted to overload a power conduit, human electricians rerouted the surge into a damaged point defense capacitor and used it to fire an improvised launcher. Every solution violated some Karad assumption. Every solution worked. Yet the battle outside remained undecided. The Sithari fleet still outnumbered the Dominion nearly 3-1. Their main warships had surrounded the orbital habitats. Their command vessel, the Red Ascendancy, advanced behind a shield wall of 60 cruisers. Selka calculated that the flagship would survive another 19 minutes. Thane stood before the tactical display, watching the impossible defense unfold inside his own ship, while defeat closed around it from every direction. Ambassador Ward remained beside him. "Your engineers have saved this vessel," he said. "For now, they cannot defeat 900 warships with storage containers." Ward looked toward the human convoy. "Not with the containers aboard this ship." Thane followed her gaze. The convoy's 82 transports remained locked in formation. Each carried thousands of crates. Hundreds of thousands of containers filled their cargo bays. Some held food. Some held water systems. Some held machines. All had been built to survive transport between worlds. Ward turned toward him. "Release our ships. They have no weapons. They have cargo accelerators. Those are not designed for combat. Neither were the crates." Thane considered the tactical situation. If he released the convoy, the humans could flee. The Dominion would lose the relief supplies, the prisoners, and whatever authority remained in the system. If he refused, the Sithari would take everything. The principle of separated strength had always promised control through removal. But the humans had shown that removal meant little when capability resided not in objects, but in the minds observing them. Thane opened a fleet-wide channel. "Release all human vessels," he ordered. "Restore their engines. Return control immediately." Selka transmitted the command. Across the convoy, Dominion locks disengaged. Human reactors rose from idle. Transport captains received control of their ships at the same moment that Ambassador Ward's message reached them. Captain Idris Vale commanded the convoy from the bridge of the relief carrier Cedar Dawn. He was 62 years old, broad-shouldered, and had spent half his life moving supplies through disaster zones. He had never commanded a fleet in battle. He read Ward's instructions once. Then he looked at the cargo manifest. Chief Cargo Officer Anika Sato stood beside him. "How many empty deployment crates do we have?" Vale asked. "Across the convoy?" "Across every ship." Sato searched the logistics network. 206,000. "How many cargo accelerators?" 480. "Can they be aimed into space?" "They can now." Vale looked through the bridge windows at the Sithari fleet. "Open the convoy channel." Every human transport received his voice. "This is Captain Vale. Dominion control has been removed. All ships are to begin emergency maneuvers. Cargo teams will empty every reinforced container, not carrying medical personnel, live seed cultures, or essential reactor equipment." Sato glanced at him. "That leaves a lot of containers," Vale continued. "Engineering crews will modify accelerators for external launch. Navigation teams will link targeting to the survey network. We are going to build artillery." Across 82 vessels, 18,000 humans went to work. The convoy ceased to resemble a line of helpless transports. Cargo doors opened. Robotic loaders moved thousands of crates toward launch bays. Relief supplies were secured in corridors, crew quarters, maintenance spaces, and empty fuel compartments. Engineers removed safety limits from cargo accelerators. Navigation officers calculated firing solutions. Construction crews fitted crate clusters with guidance thrusters. Agricultural specialists filled containers with irrigation valves, steel cable, water purifier cores, excavation teeth, and every dense object that could survive acceleration. Medical teams contributed empty shielding canisters. Bridge crews rotated their ships toward the enemy. The Sithari noticed the movement, but misunderstood it. They believed the human convoy was preparing to flee. Red Ascendancy Commander Vask Ral ordered 20 cruisers to intercept. The cruisers accelerated toward the transports. Captain Vale watched them approach. "Convoy artillery ready," Sato reported. "How many launchers operational?" 312. "A coincidence," Vale said. "What is?" "The Dominion had 312 ships when this started." Sato looked at him. "Are we counting cargo launchers as ships now?" "Today we are counting everything." The Sithari cruisers entered range. Vale raised one hand. Across the convoy, cargo officers waited beside controls, never intended for battle. "Fire," he said. 312 accelerators launched at once. The first volley contained 800 storage crates. They crossed space in broad clusters, guided by survey thrusters and civilian navigation beacons. Some opened before impact, releasing clouds of dense fragments. Others remained sealed, becoming 14-ton kinetic shells. Still others carried construction cable that spread between them across hundreds of meters. The Sithari cruisers fired defensive beams. They destroyed hundreds of crates. They could not destroy all of them. A sealed container struck the first cruiser near its bow and passed through the vessel from end to end. A cable cluster wrapped around a second cruiser's maneuvering fins and pulled 3 guidance surfaces away. Fragment crates opened among the formation. The cruisers turned aside. Human transports fired again. Then again. The battle became something no Karad officer had ever imagined. Storage containers filled the sky. They came from every direction, launched in organized waves. Crates marked for food storage became kinetic penetrators. Water system containers burst into clouds of valves and pump housings. Bridge component crates released hundreds of hardened anchor spikes. The human convoy did not possess warship reactors, military armor, or advanced targeting computers. It possessed logistics. It possessed coordination. It possessed engineers. Most of all, it possessed scale. The Karad had confiscated humanity's weapons because they feared 6 patrol ships. They had overlooked 82 transports carrying the industrial capacity to rebuild worlds. That same capacity now dismantled a fleet. On the command deck of the Resolute Mandate, Grand Marshal Thane watched the human formation advance. The transports moved behind curtains of improvised artillery. Dominion vessels regrouped around them, adding conventional fire to the storm of crates. Sithari cruisers broke apart under impacts they could not predict. Raiders attempted to weave between projectiles, only to encounter cables, fragment clouds, and guided container clusters. The Red Ascendancy turned away from the orbital habitats. Captain Vale saw it. "All ships, concentrate forward launchers," he ordered. Sato examined the remaining cargo. "We are running out of empty crates." Vale pointed toward the rows of confiscated Dominion weapon containers stored in the aft bays. "Use theirs. Those are smaller. Then bundle them." Human crews strapped 6 Karad weapons crates around a central bridge beam. Guidance thrusters were attached to the outer frames. 3 magnetic accelerators were linked in sequence to launch the mass. 27 transports prepared identical projectiles. The Red Ascendancy accelerated toward the violet storm. Vale watched its engine signature rise. "Fire by sequence," he ordered. "Shape the corridor." The first human volley passed to the left of the command ship. The Sithari turned right. The second volley crossed ahead of it. The command ship descended. The third volley opened behind it, filling retreat space with fragments. The Red Ascendancy entered the only clear path remaining. Mara Ven had predicted that path from the turret of the Resolute Mandate. Her first launcher lay destroyed behind her. The rails had twisted beyond use after the initial shot. Her technicians had built another. This one used 6 storage crate frames bound around the surviving turret axis. The projectile waiting within it was larger than the first, assembled from the reinforced container that had once carried a portable hydroelectric generator. Inside the crate were 4 reactor shielding discs, 20 anchor counterweights, and the remains of the Karad cannon barrel that had originally occupied the turret. Okafor looked at the tactical display. The Red Ascendancy was coming directly toward them. "You planned this with Captain Vale?" Mara adjusted the final trajectory. "We did not need to." "Then how did he know where to send it?" "He is a logistics officer." That did not answer the question. It answered all of it. The Sithari command ship crossed the final distance. Its shields had been weakened by Dominion fire and repeated crate impacts. Its escort vessels were scattered. Its engines burned at maximum power. Mara aimed the improvised launcher. Neril stood behind her, one hand gripping the damaged turret wall. "Your device failed after 1 shot last time," he said. "This is a different device. Is it better?" "No." The launcher charged. The Red Ascendancy began to turn. Mara fired. The generator crate left the turret at impossible speed. Sithari defensive beams struck it. The outer shell burned away. The thermal layers survived. A second beam shattered one side. The shielding discs remained on course. The crate reached the Red Ascendancy. It struck below the command vessel's primary engine. The impact did not destroy the ship. It tore through the propulsion assembly, shattered the central power conduit, and exited through the opposite side in a cloud of molten fragments. The Red Ascendancy went dark. Across the system, Sithari formations faltered. Dominion warships closed around them. Human transports continued firing. Grand Marshal Thane opened a system-wide channel. "Sithari vessels," he said, "your command ship is disabled. Your boarding forces are contained. Your retreat has been obstructed by human artillery. Power down your weapons and surrender." For 12 seconds there was no reply. Then one Sithari cruiser shut down its guns. Another followed. Across the tactical display, hostile markers changed color. 9 centuries of raiding ended not with a Dominion superweapon, nor with a grand fleet maneuver, but beneath a storm of storage containers fired by a humanitarian convoy. The battle for Narethis lasted another hour. Its consequences lasted far longer. The Sithari prisoners were not executed. Ambassador Ward insisted that the wounded receive treatment alongside human and Karad casualties. Captain Vale ordered relief supplies transferred to the damaged habitats before the Dominion could claim them. Grand Marshal Thane objected only once. "Those supplies are Dominion property," he said. Ward looked through the observation window at the civilians waiting below. "No," she replied, "they are food." Thane did not argue again. In the months that followed, the Karad Dominion returned every human weapon it had confiscated. It also returned the convoy, the cargo, and 12 systems seized during previous expansions. The principle of separated strength was removed from Dominion military doctrine. In its place appeared a new warning. It was taught to every Karad officer, engineer, and boarding commander. Human strength cannot be measured by counting human weapons. It cannot be removed by emptying an armory. It cannot be contained by placing tools inside locked rooms. For the humans had crossed the stars carrying no invasion fleet. They had brought seeds, bridges, pumps, medicine, and machines meant to rebuild broken worlds. When those gifts were threatened, humanity did not abandon their purpose. The bridges became launch rails. The pumps became recoil systems. The survey drones became guides. The storage crates became artillery. And when the battle was over, the surviving crates were gathered, repaired, and filled once more with food. That was the part the galaxy remembered. Humanity could turn anything into a weapon, but it always preferred to turn the weapons back into something that could carry hope.